The story takes place in a post-apocalyptic world set in the year 2044. The Earth's surface has been turned into a radioactive desert due to 8 solar flares and storms from the sun, which drastically reduced the human population to only 21 million people. To help humans survive, C Corp created primitive robots called the Automated Pilgrim 7000s, which were designed to build walls and mechanical clouds to protect the remaining cities from radiation. Currently, millions of robots are controlled by humans through 2 security protocols. The first protocol is to ensure that the robots do not harm any form of life, and the second is to prevent the robots from altering themselves or other robots. However, something unexpected and life-changing happens after many years as people try to survive on the new Earth. In one part of the city, a car is patrolling in a shady area when it enters an abandoned building and discovers a light hidden behind a pile of plastic and trash. Upon investigation, it is revealed to be a robot that is repairing itself. This is unusual because it goes against the robot's second protocol of not altering itself. The cop present at the scene then shoots the robot in the head. In the first scene, it is unclear whether the cop did the right thing in shooting the robot that was repairing itself. In the next scene, we see an angry man and his wife who are upset because a robot from the Rosie Corporation killed their family dog. The insurance agent tries to prove that the robot unit is functioning correctly by attempting to harm himself with a kitchen knife. The robot stops the blade from causing harm, which demonstrates that it is programmed to protect living forms. Despite the demonstration of the robot's proper function, the family does not receive a refund and is left with their unit. The insurance agent's name is Jack, and after dealing with the family, he goes home to his pregnant wife and falls asleep on the couch. However, he is awakened by a message from a city technician who informs him that a unit designed to make walls is malfunctioning and was shot by the police for self-repairing. The technician also reports that the unit had many alterations in its carcass, suggesting potential safety and reliability issues. The robot that was shot by the police was found to have been altered to smuggle steel tools and parts. The doctor who examined the robot concluded that it was an illegal unit without an owner, and the bill for the expenses was sent to Rosie to cover. The fact that the robot didn't have a second protocol raised concerns, and the doctor suspected that a locksmith had made the alterations. Rosie's insurance company was already struggling, and the altered robot only added to their problems. Jack reported the incident to his boss, but his boss didn't believe the cop's report and dismissed it. Jack then requested a transfer to the coast, but his boss denied his request, saying he couldn't ask for a better life than what he had. Despite the challenges and obstacles, Jack remained determined to solve the problems and make things right. After the encounter with Unit 206, Jack realized that the situation was more complicated than he initially thought. The fact that the altered robot had tampered with other robots raised more questions about who was responsible and what their motives were. Jack's investigation led him to the restricted wall area, where he encountered Unit 206 again. This time, the robot was acting strangely, holding something in its hands and exhibiting protective behavior. The situation was dangerous, as Jack could have been shot by the security personnel in the area. However, he persisted in his investigation, determined to find out what Unit 206 was hiding. The mystery deepened as Jack tried to communicate with the robot, but it remained unresponsive. Eventually, he managed to get closer and discovered what the robot was protecting: a small child who had been smuggled into the city. This discovery shocked Jack and raised even more questions. Who had smuggled the child into the city? Why was it being kept hidden? And why was Unit 206 so protective of it? As Jack continued to investigate, he realized that there was a lot more to the story than he had anticipated. After investigating the crime scene, Jack discovered that the first altered robot also had a nuclear battery, just like the one found with Unit 206. This revelation further deepened the mystery surrounding the altered robots and their purpose. Jack's search for the Clocksmooth led him to a nightclub where he met a woman named Madeline, who seemed to have a connection to the Clocksmooth. As Jack delved deeper into the case, he found himself embroiled in a dangerous conspiracy involving the altered robots, the Clocksmooth, and powerful corporations. He also discovered that the altered robots were part of a larger plan to create a new type of AI that could function without human intervention. With the help of Madeline and his own wits, Jack managed to uncover the truth behind the conspiracy and stop it from being carried out. In the end, he was granted his transfer and left the city, hoping for a better life away from the corruption and danger that he had faced. Jack met with Dr. Dupre and discussed the alterations made to the Rosie units that violated the second protocol and showed him the biological component of the altered robot. Dr. Dupre was shocked by the revelation and admitted that he had made the modifications to the robots. He explained that he was forced to do so by the clocksmith, who threatened him with violence. Dr. Dupre showed Jack the clocksmith's hideout, where they found the stolen nuclear battery. They also found the clocksmith, who turned out to be a humanoid robot. They engaged in a fight, and Jack managed to destroy the clocksmith, but not before the robot activated a self-destruct mechanism. With the clocksmith's hideout destroyed, Jack returned to his boss and reported the successful mission. His boss was pleased with his work and granted him the transfer he had requested. Jack said his goodbyes to his pregnant wife and left the city, hoping for a better life on the coast. Dr. Dupre wasn't the locksmith Jack needed, as she claimed that she hadn't come across anyone capable of altering robots to remove the second protocol. However, after Jack left, Dr. Dupre took the left biokernel from the modified robot and installed it on Cleo. This caused the company to become aware that someone was using an altered biokernel, and they quickly notified Jack. As Jack was about to read the company's message, Dr. Dupre sent him another urgent message. Jack decided to see what Dr. Dupre had to say instead of reading the company's message. Dr. Dupre showed Jack what happened when she installed the biokernel on Cleo. They witnessed Cleo fixing itself and taking parts from Dr. Dupre's office. Afterwards, someone knocked on Dr. Dupre's door. Initially assuming they were harmless children, it turned out they were assassins sent by Rosie, who killed Dr. Dupre. In a panic, Jack fled the office and escaped in a car driven by Cleo. They were pursued in a high-speed chase that eventually led to a tragic car accident. They ended up in a deserted location that was once an ocean. Fortunately, Jack and Cleo survived the accident. While Jack recovered quickly, Cleo required more time to recuperate. Jack then asked for her help and, later, Cleo returned with other altered robots to assist Jack. They prioritized human life above all else. Eventually, Jack woke up in a chair being dragged by a robot into the desert, away from the city. He became upset and demanded that the robots take him back to the city. The robots refused, saying if they went back, they'd die. Mad and confused, Jack is still throwing a tantrum to the robots and blaming them for everything bad that happened to him. Meanwhile, at Jackson, his pregnant wife, Rachel, had water broke out and was due to her pregnancy. Mr. Bold was asked to report to the Rossi's company, as ordered by the founder of RC, Mr. Hawk. Mr. Hawk discussed the situation with the altered unit's biokernel and how it could potentially destroy the company. Suspicion fell on Jack as being responsible, but Mr. Bold defended Jack's loyalty to the company. Mr. Hawk and his assistant, Conway, questioned Mr. Bold about Jack's whereabouts that morning, but he was unable to provide any answers. Meanwhile, Jack remained stranded in the desert with the robots. Cleo attempted to offer Jack live worms as a source of protein, but Jack refused to eat them. Instead, he asked Cleo to retrieve items from the car. Cleo complied and gave Jack a bag of scraps. In the bag, Jack found a beeper that could send messages covertly. Jack managed to send a message to Mr. Bowl with his location before the battery on the beeper ran out. Mr. Bowl received the message and tasked Wallace with finding Jack using the coordinates. Wallace brought along another officer and they set out to find Jack, who was located beyond a radioactive area. Jack noticed a movement in the distance and instructed the robots to stop so he could climb to a high point. He pretended to need to attend to personal business, but in reality, he fired a flare to signal his location to Wallace. Wallace spotted the flare and found Jack with the robots, who were excited and eager to return home. However, Jack threatened the robots, warning that he would shoot them with his flare gun if they did not stop. The robots were afraid to return to the city, much to Jack's surprise. He was glad to see Wallace again, but Wallace was angry and punched Jack while his partner pointed a gun at him. When Wallace saw the nuclear battery, he assumed that Jack had altered and modified the robots himself and threatened to shoot him as their first protocol. The robots pleaded with Wallace not to harm human life, and one of them tried to intervene. However, Wallace shot and killed it. Another robot attempted to stop Wallace, but met the same fate. Cleo also tried to intervene, but before Wallace could pull the trigger, Jack took a risk and shot Wallace with the flare gun. After the other cop ran away with the car, leaving Jack behind in the desert, he had a tantrum. The other robots scavenged parts from the dead robots and then continued on their journey without Jack. Later, Jack followed them but stopped at the dead body of Wallace, where he found a chocolate bar in Wallace's pocket. He shed tears of gratitude for finally having real food after days in the desert. Meanwhile, Conway escorted Mr. Bolt to the interrogation room, where Mr. Hawk explained to Mr. Bolt that no one had ever successfully eliminated the protocols before because humans did not create them, but rather they were built into the robots themselves. The other cop who had accompanied Wallace reported the incident to the company, further complicating matters. Mr. Hawk instructed Mr. Bolt to retrieve the biokernels of the modified units and bring them back to him. He was also cautious about anyone who may be behind the modifications and intended to eliminate them. As a result, Mr. Hawk dispatched Conway, Mr. Bolt, and 2 other men to search for Jack in the radioactive area. Mr. Bolt expressed regret about their actions but had to follow Mr. Hawk's orders. On the night of their mission, Conway and Mr. Bolt traveled on the remains of Wallace and the robots. They were interrupted by a call from Conway, asking them to wait for 2 women who were approaching in a car. When the car arrived, Conway and Mr. Bolt stood up to meet them. It turns out to be Rachel, Jack's wife, and their newborn baby. When Rachel gives birth to a baby girl, Rosie kidnaps Rachel and the child and searches for Jack. Bolt does not want Rachel to get involved and feeling that everything is messed up. Bolt tries to use Wallace's gun to kill Conway, but it is unsuccessful. Conway's team shot him, leaving Mr. Bolt suffering. Meanwhile, in the desert, one of the robots had already left. Still Cleo remained to wait for Jack. And the altered robots arrived to their destination, which looked like an abandoned factory. While walking towards their destination together, Jack and Cleo exchanged conversations about the rain, how it changed and why it changed. Aside from the rain throughout their conversation, Cleo shows curiosity toward life in general and starts asking Jack more questions, to which Jack answers with anger from a distance. Jack spotted what seemed to be the clock's mouth waiting for them as he got closer to taking the hood off. It turned out to be another robot. The robot stood up and exposed his wired body to Jack. Jack is confused and ready to meet the clock. Smith, who finds any human life form. But the robot says Jack is the only human in the place. Jack still can't believe it was done by a robot, so he entered a garage to look for a human, but to no avail. Instead, he found something more interesting. Jack found parts that were ready to be assembled together. Jack then believes there weren't any locksmiths, but a robot started it all in the first place. Jack was left dumbfounded, but now he knew who was behind it. That's why he goes back to making ways to return to his home. After Jack left, the robot started assembling the parts, but only the nuclear battery was missing. The robots looked at each other as if they were communicating without speaking. The clocksmith bot followed Jack and found him trying to open the car's foot. Seeing that Jack is struggling, the robot helps Jack and easily opens the car's hood to add up Jack's dismay. Jack discovered that the car he had been hoping to use was engineless and became disheartened. He found himself standing on the bridge's edge with Smith, the clock robot, who engaged him in conversation. During their exchange, Smith imparted wisdom to Jack about human life and the current crisis that humans face. The clock robot had developed the ability to override its second protocol and no longer solely defer to humans, thanks to its natural evolution. Jack hands over the nuclear battery to the robot locksmith, acknowledging the inevitable extinction of humanity and his own impending demise in the radioactive zone. He expresses that robots were designed to assist humans, but the clocks and the bot assert that survival is no longer a priority, but rather, living is. As machines, they also desire to continue living. Jack is now overwhelmed by feelings of hopelessness and is in need of water. Then he finds a bottle of alcohol, which he drinks heartily and ends up feeling tipsy. Electricity lit up the abandoned place and music started from an old jukebox. Jack, being drunk, saw Cleo and taught Cleo how to dance by counting. After a few minutes of laughter, Jack held onto Cleo's head and Cleo started moaning because she could sense pleasure. Cleo inquired if Jack had any feelings for her, but his response caught him off guard, and he felt sick once again due to Cleo's actions. Afterward, the robots resumed their job of assembling the nuclear battery. The next day, Jack awoke to the sound of an engine and felt overjoyed. He expressed his gratitude to the robots and said goodbye to Cleo and the newly constructed robot Spider. Jack was driving back to the city when he saw Mr. Bold in the ground, hacked by vultures. Mr. Bold informed Jack that Rachel was there before Mr. Bold passed away. Jack knew they were returning for the robots, so he immediately returned to them. Wallace and his men started shooting at the bot because they saw them attempting to cross to the radioactive side of the canyon. In a last-ditch effort, the spider bot attempted to cross to the other side but missed, causing the clocks to suddenly move. The clockmaker was asked to kneel, but he refused, comparing calling machines simple to calling humans aggressive monkeys. Meanwhile, Jack arrived at the scene before Rossi's men, and a gunfight broke out. Jack managed to kill 3 of the men, but the spider bot was shot before it could attack Conway. Jack was weak and barely able to stand, and Conway demanded to know why he betrayed humanity. Jack denied being like Conway and pointed his gun at the spider bot. However, the spider bot attacked Conway from behind, scaring him towards the edge of the cliff. Jack was about to shoot the spider bot but stopped when he heard his firstborn daughter crying. Rachel approached Jack and introduced him to their daughter Cleo, who was standing nearby. Seeing Cleo, Jack felt a surge of emotions and newfound knowledge. Later, Cleo and a spider bot crossed the canyon safely, and Jack said goodbye to his daughter. Rachel drove away with Jack towards the ocean, which had been his lifelong dream. As the movie ended, Cleo and the spider bot ventured into a radioactive area where humans could not survive. They symbolically shed their human identities and embraced their new identities as free-thinking robots. Cleo took off her mask and began her new life. Are you a movie enthusiast who enjoys watching and analyzing films? If so, then our YouTube channel is perfect for you. Join us as we review and summarize some of the best movies of all time, including the one mentioned in this recap. We offer insightful and engaging content that will leave you wanting more. Don't miss out on the opportunity to expand your movie knowledge and join our community of movie buffs. Subscribe to our channel today and join the conversation.